Hello, everyone. I'm Imran. I'm the product manager for browsers in HyperWorks. Today, we'll be looking at what's new in HyperWorks 2023 for browsers. Before looking at the new feature, I just wanted to quickly refresh about some of the important features that have gone in 2022.3 because there were some queries about those features. So to start with, the display entity count dialog, this is kind of was the replacement for the displayed panel, and that used to show all the entities that are displayed currently in the graphics. So that has been replaced with this particular dialog, which gives you all the graphics entities, whether it is those entities have direct or indirect graphics. All the entities are listed in this dialog, and the displayed count. This displayed column gives you the count of those entities. There is an optional all column that is also available just for the case of comparison. This dialog can be invoked from the empty space context menu in the model browser. So the next one is an option to close all the entity views. If you've worked with the entity views open and you would like to close all of them at once before closing the session, you can do that from the empty space context menu again from the model browser. You can close all the entity views at once. Next is an option to delete all the free nodes and preserve nodes in the model. You can quickly do that by right-clicking on the nodes folder. This will kind of delete all the all the free nodes and the preserve nodes that are present in the model. So that option is over here on the nodes folder. Next, all the browser preference options are supported with the star set option command. So if a user want to set this in advance, even before invoking the session, they can actually use the star set option command with the relevant arguments to set the preferences based on the requirement. So that is also supported. Then the last one is the enhancements for the building of entity editor, especially when you have a large number of references referred to the selected entity. Earlier, it used to take a lot of time, especially in the case of load steps, where you have a lot of references, and that has been drastically reduced in the latest versions. So yeah, that issue is now fixed in the latest versions. Now moving on, 2023 features. The first one is the new card editor. This is kind of the replacement for the legacy card editor that we had in the legacy tool. And it is primarily for the legacy users who are used to editing the solver entities in the solver card format. Okay. So that is the main goal for this, and it's worth noting that going forward, our main editing tool in HyperWorks would still be Entity Editor because it allows a lot of other things. It has a lot of other capabilities. So for any entity editing, Entity Editor would be the main editing tool. But if a user is very much advanced and he knows which field is where in a given solver card, and they can actually use the card editor to edit those entities. And like you can see, it is divided into two portions. The top portion actually shows the solver data, and it mimics how the data is written into the card editor, but also has all the goodies from the entity editor, like all the editors, etc. The bottom portion actually allows for controlling attributes that can be activated to kind of activate the subcards into the card editor. Next is we have supported exporting the CSV and HTML reports from the browsers in for all the hierarchy browsers. This was present for the flat browsers before. Now it is supported exposed in all the hierarchy browsers as well. It kind of allows exporting and saving the data from the various browsers in a convenient and shareable format. Next, we have introduced a two-way sync between the browsers and idle selector. Earlier, this was only one way from the browsers and browsers to idle selector. Now we have it the other way as well. What would happen in that case is if you pick an entity in the graphics, in the idle selector, then its respective browser will be set active so that any selection that you're making in the graphics is always in sync with the browser, and that entity is selected in the browser, and relevant data is is shown in the entity editor for review and editing. Next, we have added the card image column on by default. This was kind of missing for some of the entities, and since the advanced selection dialog is based off the entity views, this particular column was missing there, and for making selection based on the card image or the config was not possible. So now we have added this as a default column in almost all the entity views. So this should come up in the advanced selection dialog as well. Then a pretty much requested feature of slow click rename in the browsers. This was there in the legacy tool, and so we have brought that back here in the new interface as well. So if an entity is selected, you can click it again to enter into the rename mode. Then for the rename by ID tool, it had a restriction earlier that you would had to always, it would always pick the ID, irrespective of whether it's present in the string or not. That restriction is now removed. So that allows kind of keeping the existing name and adding prefix or postfix without actually including the IDs. And one more limitation was about the string being case sensitive. So that is also removed. Let me quickly show some of those features here in the product. So to start with, for the card editor, the entry point can be either graphics. You can pick an entity in the graphics and right click and invoke the card editor from here, or from the browser, you can select and invoke the card editor from there as well. Once this is up, like I mentioned, the bottom portion kind of includes the controlling attributes, and the top one actually shows the solver data. And here, compared to the legacy card editor, an advantage we have here is we kind of allow some of the non-solver attributes also to be edited here. For example, the name, color, include, etc. All those can be edited from here. Then we have these controlling attributes from where you can define and add the subcards. And since this is based on the entity editor technology, we get kind of get all the editors from the entity editor itself. So you can click on a selector and pick an existing entity to assign for the selected entity. That's one thing. And if you want to create a new entity, that is also supported, you can just right click and create a new entity. We would take you to the next page where the new entity is actually posted in a card format again. And you can add subtypes, for example, subcards. Then the editors is pretty much similar to the entity editor. On hover over, we kind of show the default value. You can hit enter to accept, then either use tab to go to the next cell or the attribute and select those. And then picking from the list, selectors are also supported. So, and if we wanted to select, define any existing entity, we can post it there. And if I add this particular card, it'll allow me to, for example, pick any of the existing values from the list. And the tooltips that are present in the entity editor are also supported within the card editor. So whatever data or the details that are available in the editor for a given attribute, that will be carried over here, and user can use that. Once the editing of the new entity is done, you can again navigate back to the previous entity from where you had started. And here, from the context menu point of view, we kind of support create edit like we saw, and other options like show, hide, isolate, and review. And you can even find the references of this referred entity from the card editor itself. Then we also allow for numeric fields, the creation of a parameter. If an entity is actually not a solo keyword, or it's not supported not supported from the solo point of view, like in case of OptiStract here for this parameter, we kind of leave this blank and allow user to edit from the from the bottom entity editor. And again, you can go back to the previous selection. And similarly, like in case of entity editor, you can also pick multiple entities and you can do multi-edit. Then most of the fields will be shown with the hashes, and any editing here will apply to both the selection that you would have done. Okay, so that was about that. Next would be the export of hierarchy from the hierarchical browsers. Uh, Now we've exposed that in all these browsers. You can, for example, if you wanted to export the hierarchy structure from the path browser, you can just go there and pick the. So a couple of points that I want to show here is once we have the export, we try to kind of maintain the hierarchy that was present in the browser. So we kind of do that with the different levels, and it kind of gives you the structure that was actually present in the browser, and then there is a column to indicate which entity it is, and then any attribute that's present as a column inside the browser, those will be exported. And likewise, this is present in all the hierarchy browsers now. For example, the subsystem and include browsers. Uh, you can export the data as a report either in CSV or HTML from there as well. And since this was exposed, we decided to also expose this in the model browser as well. So you can export the entire content of the model as a report and utilize that. This kind of also addresses an issue that we had with the master memory tool, where the data at the parent level, for example, at this assembly level, was not getting exported. Now, with this enhancement, we also get that as well. So you can see here for at the assembly level as well, we now get all the structural mass and all the total mass values which were kind of missed out earlier. Okay, next for the idle sync selection. Let me just open a couple of browsers. So in earlier version, where if users were using the browsers with the two dock areas, like one on the right and one on the left, if you would pick an entity, for example, and work with the browser on the right side, and then you had to review something on the left side and you use this. Now, next time, if you switch from the idle selector to the entity which was on the right side, picking anything in the graphics would not automatically sync it because the active browser was not changed in the background. Just only the idle selector would have changed. Then user would had to manually click in the browser and make it active, and then make the selection again in the graphics. Now that is kind of resolved because we automatically change the active browser. So you can just switch from there. You don't have to make the browser specifically active because it's already done. So how this would affect the behavior when you're working only with single dock area is when you pick an entity in the idle selector, and if its respective browser is open, we automatically switch the browser now. We make that respective browser active so that you can pick an entity, that entity is selected in the browser, and you have the details in the entity editor. And one pretty cool feature, cool use case of that would be, for example, if I pick a component and then you wanted to kind of see the values of its property and its all attributes, just upon switching, it will pick the referenced entity in the header selector, and the same will be highlighted here. And again, from there, you can go to materials, and the same would work for any other entity types. You can, for example, pick a part and then you switch to subsystems, and it will highlight the subsystem where those parts are present, and vice versa. So yeah, this link is now present, and for some reason, if a user doesn't want to use it, they can turn this particular option off from the preferences, and upon switching the browser, the idle selector will not switch, and vice versa. Okay, the next one, like I mentioned earlier in the previous release, we didn't have the card image column to allow user to pick based on the card image. Now that is addressed by adding the card image with config column in the browsers, which is kind of replicated in the advanced selection dialog as well. Then the slow rename is also present, and for some of the options that are changed here, like we can now get rid of the ID and just add a postfix to it, and I'll add the given postfix with the existing name by not including the ID. And similarly, you can actually assign a prefix as well. And last thing is you can now use the lowercase as well. The square brackets are used to kind of indicate that you're picking an attribute. Currently, only name and ID are supported here, but this can be enhanced going forward to kind of allow all the attributes to be supported there. Okay, yeah, that was a quick one. That's pretty much that I had for today. Thank you.